if you had to give some cons to the Bayside, besides that it's not on the beach, what do you guys have to say?
Just the distance. I'm a beach girl all day. I'm opposite of Chris. But the distance from the bay to the beach, you're talking four blocks, 5 blocks.
Depends where you're at.
Depends which island that would be. But we have bikes. Take your bike,
But
backpack, and
there is a difference
to the
in those
beach.
short. Yeah, I understand.
I think depending on where you live on the bay, for what I'm gonna say, it can also be busy, right? If there is wave running going on and there's boats and they're humming up and down and they're doing all that stuff, it can be busy, which means it's just noisy all the time. So I think that could be a con if you're. I mean, it doesn't really happen at night, but it could just be something that's just so there's a lot of activity going on around your property a lot. That might be something that you're not into that. You just want more peace and quiet. You might be in a spot that might have a little bit more activity around it. So
No lifeguards, I don't think, on the bay usually. So if you're worried about having the kids swimming and, there's no lifeguards on the bay. So
The lifeguards, and then just the water quality. Beaches are always just kind of better to swim in because the waves and current are both stronger. It tends to just
keep it cleaner.
feel nicer than the bay sometimes, especially if you have kids. Between that and the lifeguards, I think that tends to be a kind of a con.
fuel from boats, get
Yeah.
some water.
Yeah.
You said horseshoe crabs?
Horseshoe crabs. There's a certain time of the year, usually the end of May, beginning of June, where they're all over.
Yeah,
And if you get people squeamish or weird about them, you know what I mean, they could probably freak you out.
If you step on them underwater or something?
You could. You got to be careful.
But
yeah.
Get mad? I mean, it's like a giant thing, right?
They're huge.
Big.
Yep. Yeah, big.
Stinger looking thing?
It's
It's
not
not
a
a
stinger.
stinger.
It's just it's their navigating piece, right? I would have to say I've definitely stepped on them before, but
It's not painful. It's just if you don't know a lot about them, they can be scary looking.
Yeah.
they are scary
They
looking.
wash up there.
And they don't
They're not the
like
prettiest
pinch
thing.
you per se, but it's just not something that if you know what you're expecting, okay. But if you don't, it can be a little intimidating, especially if you're in the water and you don't realize that that's.
If you're on the Delaware Bay, and again, so that's the bay that has the sand for all you people out there. But if you're on the Delaware Bay, like when they run, like Mary was just talking about, like there's hundreds.
So many.
When it hits low tide, there's hundreds that just line the beach and stuff like that. So it's actually pretty cool to see. Obviously, you feel bad because they're dead, but it is pretty. It's a pretty neat feature to see every year how they just run and then they just get stranded or what have you.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
I try to flip them over. Give them that second chance.
Give them hope.
That's crazy.
Well, it's pretty amazing actually when you think about it. With the area that we cover, when you talk about depending on where you are, and you start talking about living on the bay or being on the bay, like there's the intercoastal living, and then there's the Delaware Bay living. Like when you reference the bay, it's more about the Delaware Bay and the beach and this massive body of water that goes to Delaware and down through the Chesapeake, as opposed to, I live back on the bay. You may not necessarily live on the bay. You live on the intercoastal that runs the backside of the ocean. So it's funny how depending on where you are, like down here, if you're down in the Wildwoods and Cape May and whatnot, it's more about the Delaware Bay as opposed to as you move up the coast and you're into Ocean City and Sea Isle, it's the Back Bay and the channels for boating and things to that nature. How they're actually kind of different in that perspective. So